So I was reminded recently about how incredible our reality is and how the nature of consciousness just never ceases to amaze me. And this experience I had recently that reminded me of this was with a new listener, someone who found the podcast recently, and she found the podcast and looked it up online to see me visually because she had a dream. She had a lucid dream that involved me. We've never met before in this life, at least. And it was a reminder for me of how the universe, spirit, our soul, our higher self, our non-physical team leave us clues and utilize different aspects of our consciousness to connect us and bring us to the right information at the right time in the right ways to move us along in our journey, to help us on this evolutionary path that we are on. And when this experience happened, which was really beautiful, to have this sort of connection in the dream world that led to connection in the physical world, which is really how the reality of our universe works. Everything physical emanates from the invisible. So as we're able to learn how to tap into the invisible and learn how to work with the energy network, the energy field of the universe, as we're learning how to tap into altered states of consciousness and access these other, let's say, dimensions of our reality, dimensions of our psyche, chambers of our soul, we can gain access to so much more information and clues that help us align with the life path that we're supposed to be on. So as this experience happened recently, it reminded me that in this whole first season of the podcast, while we've talked about some of our personal experiences a bit, and we certainly talked about some of the ET experiences early on, I haven't really properly explained all of the experiences that have led me to the point I'm at today, leading this podcast, leading our followers and our community at Star Family Wisdom in our courses and programs. And I think, as we talk about some of these, what we would maybe sometimes think of as anomalous experiences, or as we talk about extraordinary experiences that happen to us, it can help us peel back the layers of reality and help us understand how reality works. And ultimately, as we have these sorts of conversations, it can help us understand how we are becoming the new human. So I wanted to share more about my personal experiences today as we wrap up season 1. We are coming to the close of our first season. Thank you to everyone who's been watching and listening so far. It's been so awesome to connect with all of you and learn more about your experiences too. For those who are new, welcome. My name is Jenna Layden, and I am the founder of Star Family Wisdom. I'm also a former global vice president for Whole Foods Market. And at Whole Foods Market, I spent many years leading teams and individuals through change and transformation. And it's kind of uncanny now that I'm doing work that's leading people through the biggest transformation that we'll probably, experience on this planet in modern times. So we are in the process of becoming the new human, and we are shifting and evolving and transforming in a way that is essentially creating a quantum leap for our civilization, for our planet to thrive and flourish. We have to make a quantum leap. We know there are immense challenges and complications in our current civilization on Earth, and those challenges require us to become the new human quicker, sooner rather than later, for us to solve those problems. So nature, the universe, spirit is wanting us to evolve at a faster rate. And I have had some personal experience with that. So today I want to share, about those experiences. And for those who don't know me, I used to be atheist. I was atheist for the first 30 years of my life. And it wasn't until the last 4 or 5 years that I drastically changed my worldview. I went through a spiritual awakening and a series of experiences that have forced me to change my mind. And, as a leader, I think it's important. I've always, told this and shared this, thought concept with my teams that when we're presented with new information, we should be able to integrate that and change our minds and change course based on that new information that's being presented, right? That's a logical way of operating. So I've always been a very logical, analytical, very science-minded person in how I operate. I've always been fascinated by what's going on this planet. I've always been fascinated by the idea that we're just on this planet and it appears as though we're alone. That always boggled my mind. Like, how could we be alone? It makes no sense, right? It makes no sense based on how big our universe is. So I used to be atheist and, held this worldview of, well, I guess we're alone and I guess this is an accident. I don't know what's happening here. And I was highly confused, but I was also very focused on my mission at Whole Foods, and I felt this deep calling to that mission. And I rose through the ranks at Whole Foods very quickly and became a global vice president of merchandising at the age of 30, which is not exactly normal. I also did not have a college degree, by the way. And in this process of going through my awakening over the last few years, it has become clear to me that I've always possessed some advanced kind of perceptive abilities, but they just weren't that prominent or obvious for a long time. So one of the reasons I was able to navigate my environment at Whole Foods and move through the ranks as a leader is because I possessed some of these innate abilities. I just knew how to lead people without ever being taught. I was able to just tune in to information and interpersonal dynamics and team dynamics. It's almost like I was able to kind of feel and experience where there was distortion or where, certain aspects of our plan, our operations were out of alignment. And I was able to bring order to chaotic situations in ways that just came naturally. And there were times that I would just know things that I shouldn't know. And this is a sign of claircognizance for anyone who's not as familiar with the clairs or how to describe different perceptual abilities. There are a lot of ways we sense information and can tap into the energy field that connects us all. And as I have had experiences that have forced me to question my reality and what is true, I've learned about all of these things. So I want to talk about those experiences and explain how this became more clear to me. And then ultimately, how my awakening and some of these experiences led to my understanding of extraterrestrial life being absolutely real and present in our reality. So we're evolving at a fast rate, and we're coming out of our dark ages as a civilization. And just briefly, as some foundational information, it's important to know that we have a lot of evidence that humans in our distant past maybe were more advanced and had a different experience of reality. We even see this in a lot of our indigenous cultures on Earth. We see that the cultures that have not been disconnected from nature have a very different experience of reality, and I guess, dare I say, a magical experience of reality. And we even have evidence that humans used to have longer lifespans. And as we are coming out of our dark ages, we are in the process of shifting and clearing thousands of years of heavy traumatic energy and information that has been programmed into our personal energy fields, our collective energy field for humanity, and ultimately our minds and bodies. So we all have our own personal energy field, and that energy field interacts with the collective energy field of a species, and that energy field, both energy fields, are interacting with the universal energy field. So we have these layers of information and layers of programming, layers of energy that give rise to the reality around us, and how our personal energy field is programmed and imprinted with information dictates how we operate, how we think, how our bodies regenerate or don't regenerate properly. And ultimately, it's helpful, I think, to think of our energy field being like a blueprint for our life. And when we come into this life, we have this perfect blueprint that is meant to help us, right? Help our bodies, be or regenerate and generate according to that blueprint. And that blueprint also contains information about the types of people and experiences we'll meet and have, and maybe what sort of karma we are facing and dealing with in this life, because all of our past life experiences are programmed into that energy field. So not only is information from the early part of our current life programmed into that energy field. So if we, grew up in a household that was traumatic or chaotic, that's getting, programmed into our energy field and our minds, and we're taking on beliefs that are changing the structure of that energy field. And then that is interacting with the universal energy field, which then ultimately gives rise to our experience of life. So at this point in time on Earth, all of us have an extraordinary amount of negative, dense, heavy, outdated, unhealthy programming in our energy field, in our minds, and in like the cellular structure of our bodies. So we are all on a healing path. We are all on a healing journey, shedding and shifting energies from the last few thousand years of distortion on Earth that we've all been carrying. But as we do that, the beautiful part of that process is we are becoming the new human. We are raising our vibration. We are lightening our energy field. We are lightening our frequency. We are raising our frequency. We are shedding mass, right? We are losing density and mass, right? Like you can think of this as like a physics equation. So as we're in that process of shifting energy in our field, reprogramming our mind to get rid of those, old programs, old beliefs that are not true or not aligned to our perfect blueprint, the blueprint we're supposed to have, or the best version of the blueprint that's possible for us personally and for us collectively. As we do that work, we are in the process of becoming the new human. And that looks like advanced and developed psychic abilities and heightened perceptive abilities. That is the natural state of being human. We're meant to be supernatural in a lot of ways. And these abilities are meant to help us. They're meant to help us navigate reality. And this, again, is what a lot of indigenous cultures on Earth have experienced when we have not taken on all of this programming and heavy energy that is counter to the way our reality actually works, and creates blockages against our ability to flow with the energy of the universe and to flow with life. We, are blocking a lot of our ability to perceive information from the field, from other people, from our higher self. And so as we do this process of healing and shifting energies, we are able to develop psychic abilities. And, some humans have heightened perceptive abilities just in general. We're all different. We've all had many different life experiences. We all have a different biology here on Earth. We all have different ancestral biology and DNA that we're carrying. We all have different ancestral traumas, right, that we're carrying or not carrying. All of that contributes to how we are experiencing reality and how our mind, our brain, is able to interact with the universal mind or energy field. I kind of use those terms interchangeably because I like to think of the energy field of the universe being alive. Like, the universe is conscious. The universe is like a big mind. It's like a big computer, and our mind is like a computer too, and they're kind of talking constantly, right? So I kind of like that analogy. It helps the, I guess, logical part of my brain, connect the dots. So as we do this work, we can really start to access, a different experience of our reality. And no matter where we're at on our journey, we all have the ability to tap into different perceptive or perceptual abilities. And again, they're going to show up a little different for everyone. So I want to share some of my early experiences and how they've continued to develop, so that for you, if you've had experiences that are anomalous or strange or are difficult to explain, maybe this will be helpful for you. And maybe you'll see in yourself that you're having extraordinary experiences. You're not crazy. There's not, anything to be worried about. We do have to be discerning always in how we, understand where information's coming from, or in, who we start to acquire knowledge from. So we always have to be discerning, but we can absolutely trust, when our intuition, our soul, our higher self, or our non-physical team is showing up for us. So let's get into it. I'll start at the beginning from, when I first started going through my spiritual awakening, and what some of those early experiences were that shocked the hell out of me and made me question my reality in a really deep way. Okay, so years ago, I was atheist. Didn't really have a concept of a soul or higher power or intelligent universe. It wasn't really something I thought of that much. I was really focused on my job at Whole Foods and being of service, and acting in conscious ways, and at the level of consciousness I was carrying at that time. And again, really was just kind of science focused. And if the news or a scientist didn't say something was true, I didn't believe it, right? Now, we all know when we start to peel back the layers of information that exists on this planet, there's a lot more information we can tap into than just what's on the news. So again, I encourage you to be discerning, but to explore beyond the mainstream outlets that exist. And you're here today, so you're doing that. So my very first experience as I started going through this awakening was an experience of a dark night of the soul. I went into a deep depression because I had a relationship end, and it was a significant one. It was a relationship with someone, that I felt this really deep bond with, but I'd also been married and divorced prior, so I couldn't really explain why I felt this intense bond and this intense pain and sadness when it ended, for various reasons, because I hadn't even felt that level of, pain and depth of discomfort, in the divorce. So it threw me into this place of questioning, like, why am I experiencing such a deep, dark place? And where's this coming from? And, why do I feel this level of connection with this other person? And as I started to ask those questions, information started to arrive. So And I don't even remember how I stumbled upon the first books that I picked up and started to read, but a book about an NDE by Eben Alexander showed up on my path. I picked that up, and this was by a neuroscientist or a neurosurgeon. I think he was a surgeon, perhaps, but studied in neurology in the brain. So, from a scientific and medical standpoint, very much understood how the brain should and shouldn't function. And he went through a very anomalous near-death experience that led him to understand that consciousness is non-local. Consciousness exists outside of the brain, and the brain is just a receiver. So that was step number one. Step number two was a book about past life experiences crossing my path. So here I am opening up to the idea that, okay, I think maybe we have a soul, we have a consciousness that lives on beyond our body, that can maybe even separate from our body. And then I, found this book about past life regression, about these case studies from therapists who had just stumbled into past lives with their clients. They had been regressing their clients for, various reasons to help them, maybe quit smoking or to, heal from something. And then boom, a client popped into a past life and started, explaining all of this stuff that they should not have any, knowledge of. Shocked the therapists, and then that took them down the path of exploring past life regression. So here I am reading all these case studies of past life regression and what happens to souls when they leave the body and the reincarnation process that we go through, and how, all of our past life experiences inform the karma, right, that we're carrying, and inform, what might be happening in this life, and how the story of this life connects to those past lives. And all of a sudden I was thinking, gosh, I wonder if I have a past life with this person. And I set the intention. Intention is very powerful. The universe responds to intention, y'all. So I set the intention to learn more about that. Like, if this was true, if I shared a past life with this person, I'd like to know about that at some point. Meanwhile, I was studying and practicing meditation because in this depression, I realized I've got to find some sense of inner peace. And I'd always operated with a lot of anxiety. And because I had been operating, in this corporate world as a leader, feeling very stretched, beyond what I thought my abilities were for many years, I carried a lot of anxiety, and I was really wound up, and my brain was constantly going, constantly just figuring things out, for my job and life, all that stuff. And so I was in this place of realizing, I think meditation can help me quiet my mind, and I got to quiet my mind. I've got to find a way to turn this loop off, right? Our brain creates loops, right? And that leads to suffering, right? Our focus on the past and dwelling on what happened in the past, or worrying about the future, prevents us from staying present, creates these, thought patterns and loops that are not healthy for us. So I was in that place. I was in an unhealthy place. And I'd been studying meditation, and it took about a year, but I had finally gotten to a place where I'd found inner stillness. I could turn my mind off. And one day I was on a plane and I was listening to some meditation music. This was some gong and Tibetan sound bowl music. And one thing I know to be true about how regression works, when we access memories or information from our higher self or our subconscious, sometimes the use of like a cue, like a therapist might count down numbers or guide someone in a way where then like a snap or a clap of the hand might be used to then trigger the memory coming through. And it was in a moment when a gong sound happened that I had two past life visions spontaneously show up in my mind. This had never happened to me before, didn't even know it was possible, other than what I had been, reading about some of these past life regression cases. I didn't know spontaneous visions, were really possible. And again, I wasn't thinking, I wasn't, I wasn't going down any sort of train of thought that would have produced, these sorts of visions. It just came from somewhere else so fast and so instantaneous. It was within like a split second that both visions showed up. And as fast as they showed up, I knew what they were. I knew how they connected to this life. I knew who I was in those visions and who the other people were. And I saw the person I had been in the relationship with. So all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, yeah, the reason I'm, feeling this extreme, pain here is because like I've done this before. And the first vision was of me and a man as adults. We had just been married. He was in military clothes. He was going off to war. He never came home from war. He died in war. So we had just been married and the marriage got cut short. He died. I was abandoned, quote unquote, abandoned in that life. And then the second vision was of me as a little girl, and my father went to war and never came home. And again, I knew all of this instantaneously. It just all came flooding in and all these connections formed. And from that point forward, I thought, oh my goodness, okay, like one, that's helpful, to know that, what I'm going through might be karmic in nature. It might have been planned. It might be like a repeat experience so that I can, have this level of understanding. Now, little did I know at the time how deep my past life exploration would go, because over the last couple of years, it's gone really deep. And I've learned that, and not all of us are here to explore like every past life we've had. That's not the point. We're here to live our life, learn certain lessons, but depending on the lessons we're here to learn and the life path we're meant to go down, learning about some of those past lives and, in that process, healing that karma can be very helpful. Some of us are here to do that sort of work. So anyway, that was my, first kind of glimpse at past lives and realizing, wow, okay, yeah, I've got this wound that carried over, and I'm needing, to face that and heal that in this life. And then more information just came flooding in, and based on how fast I acquired certain books and information and how fast the connection around how our reality works came together for me, the only explanation I had at the time was, I think I'm being guided. I think something's guiding me, because I can't explain how I'm finding this information. I can't explain how the next thing I find is the next perfect piece of the puzzle from information I've been acquiring. It was really odd for a while. Now I understand where it was coming from, but it was really, really odd for a while. And even at one point, this is a really fun experience. I had been in a bookstore with a friend and had, been studying the NDEs and past life regression and, starting to learn more about, just these different perceptive abilities and magical abilities and that sort of thing. And, still had lots of questions, still was very skeptical, of a lot of this. And I was in this bookstore with a friend, and two books literally jumped off the shelf. And based on where they were at on the shelf, based on their positioning, like kind of far back on the shelf, they were not leaning. There was not really any condition there that would have lent, itself to just falling off the shelf, right? The books were just well positioned on the shelf. Like there was no other explanation other than they literally jumped off the shelf. And when they jumped off the shelf towards me, I bent down and picked them up. And my friend said, "Oh my God, did you see that?" I was slightly turned, so I didn't even really get to see them jump. I just heard them land next to me. My friend saw it. She saw them jump off the shelf. And she even said, oh my God, it's like something picked them up and threw them at you. And so when I picked up these books, they were two subject matters that, again, were the perfect piece of the puzzle that I needed at that time to help, explain some questions that I had, to answer some questions. So that was pretty extraordinary. Then another series of events started. I had at times, wondered if I could kind of perceive the future at Whole Foods, because I would just know, that going down a certain path or taking a certain action would lead to something we didn't want. I would just know that sometimes, and it would come true. And so I had, these questions about, gosh, how do I know these things? And how am I able to kind of tune into what might happen? Well, one day, again, I'm studying meditation and practicing that pretty regularly, learning how to turn my mind off. One day in meditation, another set of visions comes in, but this time it was not the past, it was the future. I didn't know it was the future at the time until the event happened. So I saw myself fall down my stairs in my home, and it was kind of a nasty fall. And I thought in the meditation, like, oh gosh, just don't want that to happen. And I just kind of moved on, I just kind of dismissed it. And then 2 days later, that exact event happened. The way it started happened exactly like I had seen it in the vision, but because I had seen it prior, because I had some prior knowledge of this event happening, it was almost like it gave my mind that split second like ability to make one change to how I moved and approached my reaction to the situation, so that I was able to catch myself. So the beginning of it started exactly how I saw in the vision, but I was able to catch myself and avoid the more, significant fall down the stairs that I saw in the vision. So I was able to change the trajectory of the future by having seen the future ahead of time. Now, for those who aren't as familiar with how that works, check out the book Future Memory by PMH Atwater. We actually interviewed her earlier in the season. So if you want to learn more about that, check that out. But essentially what's happening there is we're tapping into different probabilities that exist, right? So everything that could happen in our reality, in our lifetimes, is already a set of probabilities in the universal energy field, in the universal mind, in the universal computer, whatever you want to call it. And when we are seeing the future, or even when psychics are reading for you, they are just tapping into different probabilities. Probabilities can change. We can alter the course of events. We can shift from probability A to probability B, right? So there are all of these ways in which we can interact with the future ahead of time so that we can pick a different version of the future that we want to experience. Or like that example of my vision, in real time, be able to just react slightly differently to change that probable outcome. So that was another instance of thinking, whoa, okay, that something's happening here. And then, that continued to play out. There'd be times where I, would wake up on a Sunday and I had, brunch planned with a girlfriend and thought, oh, yep, she's canceling. And then within, like 30 minutes, I'd get a text message that she was canceling. So these sorts of things, would start to happen in different ways. It wasn't always a vision. Sometimes it was just a knowing, just like clear cognizance, just knowing something that I shouldn't know. And then I started to notice that I also seemed to have this like telepathic connection with people sometimes. And, I would be able to like finish their sentences and, maybe anticipate what they were going to say sometimes. Again, not always super prominent, but just subtle enough that I started to notice it after a while. And then as time went on and I'm, doing this study of consciousness and how these visions are possible and the nature of telepathic, psychic abilities, I'm starting to get to the point where I realize, okay, science can explain this. Like, we have enough evidence now to understand how this is possible. And I'll actually link to my book list in the show notes so you can see all of the books and some of the research that I've done on these topics to help me feel really grounded in my understanding of how psychic connections and the nature of energy works. And, ultimately, we're just all connected energetically. That's how it works, right? And we can, depending on our level of bond with different people, depending on, like that vision I had that was helpful because it was helping me prepare for a negative, potentially harmful event. We're able to tune into things that are relevant, for us. And so, I started to get so much more grounded in my understanding of how all of this works. And then one day, something even more extraordinary happened. And at this point, I'm, open to the idea that, maybe we've got spirit guides, maybe there are angels, still not really sure, still a little skeptical, but clearly, we have these different dimensions of, reality that we can tap into. And clearly, our soul and consciousness lives on. So sure, there's got to be, beings and spirit. So one day I'm at my parents' house and, I'm having a little bit of an issue with my stepmom about something. And I'm in my bed at night before I go to sleep and I'm just stewing on it. Sometimes we get into those thought loops where we're just stewing on something and going over and over and over it in our head. And this was kind of a negative stewing, and as I'm in that process of thinking about the situation and going over it in my head, a message came in and cut me off, like just interrupted my train of thought. So I knew it wasn't my, thought. It was not my consciousness. Like, this was coming from somewhere else. And the message was not necessarily scolding me, but attempting to get my attention to help me see that I was not being as kind and compassionate and forgiving as I should be. And this message said, you're not seeing it the right way. She's trying to make amends. And I, obviously, my inner dialogue stopped. And I thought, where the heck did that come from? And, again, it was helpful, right? So I didn't feel nervous or scared about where it was coming from, but I certainly was questioning where this was coming from. And at the time I thought, okay, well, maybe this is just a guide or an angel. I don't know, but I'm just going to go with it. It was helpful. Thank you, whoever that was. But then that continued to happen. Meanwhile, I'm getting far enough along in my spiritual awakening, and I had been fascinated by the past life regression cases. So I'd gone pretty deep in that research, and that was really helping me just gain, this better remembrance of how our reality works and how the flow of reincarnation works. And you can learn more about that in our Spiritual Awakening 101 course, by the way. It's free now. You can go check it out in our free library. And so I'd been doing this past life regression research and had found a couple of books about abduction cases and people who had been regressed to remember abduction experiences, because I'd always been fascinated by the topic of ETs and the potential of ETs, and had been so confused again by why we didn't have evidence. But as my awakening, progressed, and as this guidance towards different information progressed, I came, onto these books, stumbled upon these books, and started to absorb the information. And It was while reading a book by John Mack, who is a Harvard professor of psychiatry at Harvard University. He had started working with abductees and people who had claimed to have extraordinary experiences. He was highly skeptical, but in his research, he ultimately found and arrived at this, new world view that told him these sorts of experiences were very much happening, very true. And while there were aspects of them he couldn't explain totally, he was sure that some sort of contact, with extraterrestrial beings, was happening for these people. And it was in reading the first chapter of his book that I had one of the biggest emotional releases of my life. Like, it was like I had unlocked something, like I had touched some piece of information that was true to my soul. And just this wave of tears was just flooding out of me. And at the time I thought, oh my God, I think I need a past life regression. I think there's some suppressed memory here in me. And I knew enough about the science of the mind at the time and through all of this regression research to know that our subconscious, our mind is, very capable of suppressing information that may have been traumatic or maybe something our psyche just can't integrate yet. However, when that suppression happens, that can then result in problems later, or like that experience, this trigger, response that you don't know where it's coming from. So in that moment, I recognized, oh God, I think I might have some sort of connection with ETs. I think, have I been abducted? What's happening here? So I kind of, put that on the back burner as a question and continued, my exploration and research. And again, all of this just kind of happening. It's just flowing to me. I'm not even trying. I'm not even really researching. It's just the next right thing keeps appearing. I'm thinking, okay, great. I'll buy that book next. And so here I am, in this place of wanting to research and explore more, but feeling really nervous and unsure about why I'm having this emotional reaction related to the ET topics. And also, I'm getting far enough along in my kind of remembrance of our, spiritual reality and how the nature of our spiritual reality works that I'm, starting to contemplate leaving Whole Foods. And I'm not sure where this is coming from either. And this is at the end of 2019. I'm contemplating leaving and utilizing my leadership abilities in a different way, in a different arena. In this arena, and not really knowing what that would look like, and not really knowing, why I'm having this urge, because I've got a pretty, darn good job and this potential of continuing to elevate in Whole Foods if I stayed. And I'm thinking of leaving, to share this information with the world. And so I'm in one of those trains of thought again. I'm, having an inner dialogue. I'm thinking at the end of 2019 about my 2020 goals, and I'm doing journaling, and I'm mulling this over, and I'm thinking, gosh, is 2020 the year I'm supposed to leave? Should I write that down as a goal or an intention? And boom, another message comes in and cuts me off. And it says, no, your leadership will be needed at Whole Foods. And I thought, okay. Okay, sure. Again, still not knowing exactly where this is coming from. And fast forward 3 months, the pandemic happened. My leadership was needed. If I had left Whole Foods, that would not have been good timing given what the team was going through and what we were having to navigate and troubleshoot. So that was accurate guidance that I was supposed to stay. And so, throughout 2020, I'm kind of reflecting on that message like, wow, okay, that was accurate. This is so strange. Where is this information coming from? And again, reflecting on, these anomalous experiences with the visions and this, emotional release related to the ET information. And I'm, still thinking I need a regression, but I'm nervous and I don't want to do it yet. And so in 2020, at one point, I stumbled onto Daryl Anka's work with Bashar. If you've listened to, one of the previous episodes about our ET experiences, you might remember this one, but it's a fun one, so I want to include it here. Daryl Anka channels a hybrid ET being named Bashar, who is a first contact specialist who is in contact with Earth and civilizations to help them prepare and open to the truth of us not being alone. Now, because of what has happened on Earth and the level of distortion and violence and lack of harmony, that we experience right now, open contact isn't quite possible yet. But first contact is happening in a different way. And Bashar, I now believe to be true, is supporting us in that. In 2020, when I was first finding Daryl Anka and Bashar, I was highly skeptical, highly skeptical. I'm still skeptical of channels. And we'll get to talking about some of my channeling that happens at times. It's pretty integrated. I'm not just a trance channel, but although that has happened in my regression, I'll share about that. So, I was highly skeptical of this channeling. I was highly skeptical of the idea of a human being in contact with an ET like that. And about halfway through the documentary, it's called First Contact, by the way, go check it out. I turned it off because I was just like, oh, I don't know. I don't have time for this. And within seconds of turning it off, I got a pop-up on my phone because I'd ordered food for dinner that night. And I got a pop-up on my phone that said, your food has been delivered by Bashar. And in that moment, I thought, okay, this is like one too many, strange events and synchronicities. And prior to that, I'm now remembering, I had seen what I thought had been maybe 2 UFOs out west of Austin in the hills of Austin. Could not explain what else they would have been. They were way too big to be drones. Clearly were not helicopters, were not flying at the trajectory a plane would fly. They were hovering, moving up and down, and then they disappeared. So again, there's just like one too many situations, here that are adding up. And when this experience with Bashar happened, I actually laughed. I was like, okay, like, am I being contacted? Like, is this really happening? Because what are the odds? Like, what are the freaking odds of me watching Bashar, being skeptical, being on this path, turning it off, and then having that sort of event happen? I looked up how many people in the United States are named Bashar because I wanted to know what the statistical odds would be of an event like that happening. There are like 150 maybe people in the United States named Bashar. So the odds are out there. And so after that event, I was brave enough to do the regression because I, was sitting with the idea that, one, if I am an abductee, if this is my story, and if all these other people have been brave enough to go inward and, find suppressed information, suppressed memories, and face their truths, no matter how scary or traumatic or weird or whatever, if they're brave enough to do that, I should be able to do that. And I'm a leader too of people, so I have to do that. If I'm acting in integrity as a leader based on, how I've acted this entire time at Whole Foods, I have to do this. I have to learn more and then ultimately share that, because that is being of service and acting in integrity. So I did the regression, and I did the QHHT style of regression, which is the quantum healing hypnosis technique coined by Dolores Cannon. If you're not familiar with Dolores Cannon, go check out a couple of our previous episodes. We'll link to them in the show notes, where I do some book reviews of Dolores Cannon's past life regression research. So through this regression, I accessed 2 Earth lives, 2 past lives on Earth, which connect to what I'm doing now. One of them being at the Library of Alexandria in Egypt, and the second being as a a leader of initiates in a mystery school in Greece. And then after having the experience of seeing those past lives and experiencing myself in those past lives, the therapist then in this style of regression can guide you in a way where they can access your higher self or your subconscious and ask you questions directly. So in this session, the therapist, when we're done with the past lives, asks to speak directly with my subconscious. My subconscious says yes. I had brought a list of questions that I gave the therapist about all of these strange experiences and why they were happening and where the messages were coming from and why I had that, emotional release when reading about ETs and abductions. And all of a sudden we start to get some answers. And when this happens in a regression, the person who is being regressed will start to respond like in the third person. So rather than like in the past life experiencing it from the standpoint of your own personality in that life, when the therapist is talking directly with your subconscious, the answers start to become more objective and impersonal because it's coming from this other part of yourself. And so the answers started coming out of me in this way. I would say things like, Jenna needs to meditate more. She's not meditating enough, or blah, 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 right? So it would be this me speaking about myself thing happening. And ultimately, we learned that one of the reasons I had that deep emotional release when reading about ETs is that I'm connected with ETs. I've had lives as an ET. I am more familiar with ET cultures and civilizations than I am with Earth life. That's why life on Earth felt a little lonely for a long time. That's why I was a little confused when I wasn't awake. And ultimately, those messages I was receiving, they were not coming from guides in the spiritual realm. Those were coming from ET beings with whom I have a soul bond. Now, for those who aren't as familiar with how the incarnation process works, we are, as souls, assigned to a group of souls. That group is kind of like your class, and you're always incarnating with that class, right? So like, you go to first grade, with the same class, and then that same class goes to second grade, and you're with the same kids the whole way, up through school. Same thing with the soul group. You're incarnating in all these different life experiences over and over and over and over with souls that you're bonded with. And you're playing out different experiences, different roles in each life. And usually a soul group is incarnating together in a place. In this life, my soul group is split between Earth and the civilization that my soul knew before this life. And because soul groups are more tightly bonded souls, that can facilitate a stronger telepathic or consciousness connection, which is what facilitated the ability for me to receive messages from these beings that are off Earth. So we learned all that in the first regression. The therapist asked questions about the civilization I came from, and that civilization mostly operates in a starship now. And that's mostly where I lived in this previous life in this other civilization. He asked about the size of the starship, and we've got some clips of this regression on the YouTube channel. We'll link to them in the show notes here so you can hear what those answers are like. And even at one point in the regression, I started talking about angels. And again, I was in a skeptical place at this time about whether angels were even real. And here I am just very point blank, confirming, yes, guardian angels are a thing. Everyone has two. Those are different than the beings that I've been in contact with. Like, this was just as though it was something I already knew, right? Coming from a different place. But then something extraordinary happened in the regression. as if this wasn't all already extraordinary. So we are, in this process of him asking my higher self, my subconscious, these questions directly. Answers are coming. Then all of a sudden, at one point, the answers switch from being third person, right? My higher self talking about human, me, to a we. So all of a sudden, the answers are, we've always been watching and supporting. The therapist goes, who is we? So all of a sudden, these beings, right, after we had confirmed, who I was in contact with and where these messages are coming from, they took over. They started talking through me in the regression and confirming, there was nothing to worry about. And I've been carrying a lot of fear, about whatever this was. And the therapist asked for some help with that. And, they talked about how any sort of contact, whether it be physical, telepathic, whatever, it's all out of love and support, and to support the mission of my soul here on earth in this lifetime. And that part of my mission was to go through this awakening and to go from being atheist, right, with no understanding of how our universe really works, and feeling like I had no real confirmation of ET life, to this very extraordinary experience to help be a bridge between the extraterrestrial civilizations and our ancient memories of our connection with the star races, and to help act as an intermediary in a sense, and to help others in this awakening process. And so all of a sudden, they are taking over and confirming all of this, and then guiding me and telling me it's time to leave Whole Foods soon, that it's going to be time to take this next step to further, my path here on earth in a different way. And so after that regression, I, started to put the wheels in motion to do that. And so it was after that regression, I was able to start receiving some more, specific guidance, or it became more clear to me the times I was being guided, and some of the times I was experiencing synchronicities that seemed like these just extraordinary coincidences that couldn't be coincidences. Sometimes that was being facilitated by these beings because there was something I was needing to pay attention to. That's not always the case. The universe operates naturally in synchronicity. Like, if we are aligned energetically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, with the path we are meant to be on in this life, if we've not gotten off the path, if we've not gotten ourselves distorted, the universe provides us synchronicity to guide us. Like, that is the natural order of how the universe is supposed to work. And some of these beings, in other places, maybe, slightly higher vibration, slightly higher frequencies, have the ability to maybe reach down into our dimension and frequency and, tinker with it a little and give us some signs and clues. So anyway, as, we go through this process of unlocking more of the truth of our soul, as we learn more about who we really are, as we expand our consciousness, as we heal, that is also naturally unlocking the next set of clues and experiences that we're going to have that are meant to guide us towards the next thing. Like, this is something we can all experience. So fast forward, we're now at the beginning of 2021, and I've taken all of this seriously. I've continued to do more research to validate my experiences. I continue to have some anomalous experiences in meditation, where I have experienced myself as a mantis being, like in the body of that being, like experiencing the movement of that body as very different from a human body. I've experienced myself as what would be kind of like a feline type being, but bipedal, standing upright in a place that appeared to be somewhere not on Earth. And these were very quick kind of flashes, or kind of not visions, because it was almost like I bilocated. It was almost like all of a sudden I wasn't in my human body and I was having this experience as this different being. So in, meditation and my shamanic practice, I've been able to gain more insight and personal experience of what some of these other incarnations might have been. And I should also, share that the shamanic practice I was guided to, again, seems very purposeful for the work that we're here to do to become the new human. Because I've studied with the Peruvian lineage of Q'ero shamanism, which, based on my studies thus far, appears to be one of the most pure and ancient lineages of shamanism on the planet. And I've gone pretty much as far as I can go in that training. And I've also explored my own Cherokee heritage and roots as well, kind of connecting those South American shamanic practices with an understanding of the North American, Native American shamanic and indigenous practices. So it became clear after a while that, these beings with whom I am in contact with, and the beings that are guiding me at times, guided me to this specific lineage of shamanism and the specific initiations that I've been through that I can now guide people through. We're doing our next initiation in January. So check that out on the website if you're interested. You can join us in a free masterclass in December where I'll be sharing more about that. But this initiation process is meant to activate dormant DNA, shift energy in our field, bring new energy into our field that can upgrade us, that can transform our energy field into a more perfect geometrical structure, a more perfect blueprint. These initiations are meant to help connect us with some of the highest, levels of luminous beings and spirit who can support our journey on Earth. The initiations are meant to connect us more deeply with our Star Nation heritage and ultimately with Mother Earth, with this very important being here who is our mother, and at least in this life. And on that path of initiation, I've been given an opportunity to go even deeper in exploring my karma and past lives. And in the last year and a half, really, since, completing that initiation, I've accessed a chronology of past lives that goes back to what I think is about like 6,000 BC on Earth, after the Great Flood, when there was a rebuilding process happening with the Star Nations. And then subsequently, my lives that have been about preserving wisdom, initiating others, and ultimately culminating in this lifetime of being able to have these sorts of conversations more freely and openly about what is possible, what is true, and what we can remember about ourselves and our universe, how we were created, who we were created by, and what our future might look like. So it's really been through this, deepening of shamanic practice. Thank you, Star Family, for guiding me to that I've been able to access more of my connection with them. So I highly recommend that as an avenue to go down. If you are a starseed, if you are on the path of healing and transformation, if you're ready to really learn more about your soul and to also deal with your karma. Like we've got stuff to deal with in this life. We've got stuff to shift and clear and heal if we're going to become that new human. So it's, highly critical that we are engaging in that work. If we don't, it's possible that as we try to connect, with information or higher intelligences, as that filters through the human brain, it is filtering through some distortion, right? So we want to be engaging in all of the healing practices. And I think, specifically shamanic practice for that to help us, navigate a clearer, clearer connection. So a couple more before we wrap up here, just to demonstrate some more of the extraordinary, types of experiences that can happen. I want to talk a little bit about a couple of experiences that have happened in shamanic journeying practices. And this is without medicine. This is just journeying in a meditation. We don't need medicine to have experiences. And then secondly, an experience that guided me to Sedona. So last year, I left Whole Foods. I'm deepening my research and healing process and training, in shamanic practice. And I'm visiting Sedona. I had visited twice and had another trip planned to Costa Rica at the end of the summer last year. And this had been planned for like 6 months. And all of a sudden, about a week ahead of that trip, I started experiencing this strange premonition. I wasn't seeing a vision really of anything, but I was getting this feeling. That happens for me more, where I feel things before they happen. And I was starting to feel like something bad was going to happen. And I did a card reading to try to tune into some more information about this, and was picking up on maybe my premonition being right. So I ended up canceling the trip. I thought, gosh, if what I know to be true is true at this point, I guess I need to pay attention to this. I shouldn't, go through with this. I should just change course and pick a different, thing to do that week. I still wanted to go somewhere. So I thought, well, it'd be kind of nice to go back to Sedona and maybe just work, for a week in Sedona to see what Sedona feels like in that capacity. So I did. So I rebooked my flight to Sedona, came back to Sedona. And one night when I was in Sedona by myself, I had one of the most lucid, intense dreams of my life. I've had maybe like 4 or 5 dreams like this that were so detailed, so vivid, that it was like I was experiencing a different version of myself. I was experiencing a past life or a connection with a deceased loved one. And in this dream, I was driving down a windy road in a mountainous area that was very tropical looking, looked just like what Costa Rica would have looked like. My car flies off the road somehow, and the car catches air, and all of a sudden, and this is so vivid and so real in this dream, all of a sudden I realize the car is tumbling through the air and I'm about to die. Like I might die. And in this dream, I remember as the car is tumbling, my first instinct is, oh my God, this is happening. Fuck, I might die. Pardon my language. And then the car catches air, it stops tumbling, and I just immediately start praying. I have this moment of surrender, this moment of, okay, I guess if this is happening, but I've got more work to do. I don't think this is the time. I don't think I'm supposed to go yet. And so as soon as I start praying and asking for help, boom, I wake up in my bed in Sedona, but I wake up out of breath. Like I wake up exhausted, gasping for air. And this was so vivid and so real that I was like shaky for hours after this happened. And it was almost as though I was experiencing, again, a different timeline, a different probability for an event that could have happened. So if I had gone to Costa Rica, and that was the week I was supposed to be in Costa Rica, so I would have been in Costa Rica that night, it's highly likely that was an event that would have occurred, and I was tuning into it. I was tuning into an alternate timeline that my soul could have been on. So ultimately, that, along with another series of synchronicities when I was in Sedona, led me to moving to Sedona. And since I've been in Sedona, I've continued to explore this topic of past lives through my shamanic practice, mostly. Have had a couple of extraordinary ET experiences, one that involved a crop circle class by our geometry instructor, Nadi Hana, and one that involved a visitation from two mantis beings, which was confirmed in my second regression. And I've gone through with my second regression, which explained that these experiences have been happening since I was a child. They've been happening since I was 4 years old. And I had recurring dreams as a child that were kind of like screen memories for other experiences that were happening at night. And so through this process of coming to Sedona, doing this work with Star Family Wisdom, and deepening my shamanic practice, I have since accessed more information about lives in a Syrian lifetime. I have experienced myself as a mantis on a ship multiple times. I've had an experience of, this was in a shamanic journeying practice, getting surprised by both of these experiences. Did not expect this to happen in the shamanic journeying, but I found myself traveling through a wormhole, arriving on a ship, which was the ship that I was on in my second regression, visiting with those beings that are, from the civilization I came from before this life. And then secondarily, another experience, I'm giving you the very high level, synopsis of these, was, this is again in a journeying meditation, going into the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid. There's a group of beings in robes there in this vision that I'm having or experience. It's almost like I'm not even in my body anymore. I'm just having this experience. I'm laying down in the King's Chamber in the sarcophagus. The beings that are in there close the lid on the sarcophagus, and then all of a sudden the lid opens. I get out of the sarcophagus, but I'm in a different pyramid on a different planet. And there are star beings there, different ones, like different races. and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, the pyramid is a portal, like the sarcophagus, the King's Chamber. And we know about its alignment. We know about the perfect geometrical structure that, can help us manipulate space-time. Like, I think it's a portal, because in this meditation, I'm not sure if this was like an ancient memory I was accessing, or if this was like a constructed sort of vision or memory just to give me information about what's possible. But I found myself in this other pyramid on a different planet, and we walked out of that pyramid into this temple complex, which would be very similar to what we would see in ancient Egypt here on Earth. And we went to this place called the Temple of Worlds, which the beings said was kind of like a gathering spot. Like, this particular planet, not sure what it was or where it was, but apparently this particular planet is a place, and this particular temple and pyramidal area on this planet is a place where a lot of beings from various races congregate to do ceremonial, work or travel, between these different portals or stargates. So anyway, that was an incredible experience. I was guided back to the sarcophagus, put back in it. Same thing, lid goes on, lid comes off. All of a sudden, I'm back here in the pyramid on Earth. And So, as I've opened more, right, to experiencing these sorts of things, but not really trying. It's not like I sit down every day trying to have experiences because I'm living my life. We have to live our life. That's important too. And these sorts of experiences, when they happen, when we're in the right state for them to happen, can be very expanding and helpful, and help us connect dots and understand the clues that are available to help us, one, remember who we are, learn about our soul, learn about where our soul has been, what it has done, what sort of karma it's here to heal, clear, have. And then thirdly, they can again help us, understand the nature of our reality and what is possible, and the type of consciousness that we're working with in our reality. And then ultimately, all of these experiences are purposeful in helping us become the new human. And we can have more of these sorts of experiences and expanded states of consciousness by doing our healing work, by meditating, by getting out in nature, by living the spiritual laws of the universe, by getting initiated in the right way, and by asking the right questions and setting the right intentions. So we have a number of tools on the Star Family Wisdom website that will support you in that process as well. So if you are new here, welcome. Go check out the free library. It just got upgraded. We're about to add a lot of new content, including an Isis initiation and Syrian energy activation. So that will be an initiation process to help you heal your divine feminine and masculine energies and more deeply connect with our ancient lineage of Syrian energy on this planet. We also are going to be offering the shamanic initiation in January. That will be a group program. That's a 10-week shamanic initiation where we'll do shamanic practice every week, and you'll receive 10 specific energy transmissions in ceremony, where through that process, we'll shift and clear heavy energy from your field and go through that process of upgrading your field and preparing you to navigate a deeper level of healing and soul retrieval and soul awakening for yourself. So as some of this new content and these new programs are made available, we wanted to make all of our, or most of our older content free. So you can check out our free Raise Your Vibe guide for 26 steps and practices that will help you in the process of shifting and clearing heavy energy, raising your frequency. You can check out the Shamanic Healing Guide. We have a short shamanic practice course, which will introduce you to shamanic practice and some tenets of manifestation and reality creation. You can also go even deeper on manifestation and reality creation in our Masters of Manifestation course. And if all of this is new to you, start with the Spiritual Awakening 101 course and maybe the 10 Spiritual Laws of the Universe course or ebook. And if you are on the path of learning about your ET connections, check out the UFOs and Preparing for Contact course and the Meet the Star Races course as well. So we've got tons of good information along with all of the previous podcast episodes. If you haven't listened to all of them yet, go back and check them out. There's so much valuable information that will support you in your process of becoming the new human. So before season 2 begins in 2023, go check out all of those free resources and start to dive deeper. That's your homework. That's your homework, because next year, as Bashar tells us, is the beginning of the window for open contact. Doesn't mean it's going to happen next year, but it means we are preparing. And if you're here, you are being called to prepare. So go prepare, have fun with all of those free resources. And I hope this synopsis of some of my experiences and how I've navigated this opening process, this, evolution of my worldview and this evolution of my understanding of reality and how I've integrated these experiences can help you in integrating the experiences that you're having, and to remember that you are an extraordinary being having extraordinary experiences in a magical and extraordinary universe. And ultimately things just got a little off track here on Earth, and we're trying to rectify that. So your job is to become the new human so that you can contribute to a different version of human civilization as we go forward. Okay, that's it for today. That's a wrap on season 1. Thank you so much for being here. It's been so awesome to connect with all of you, and we'll see you again in season 2 in 2023. Have a great rest of 2022, y'all. And I am setting intentions for you to experience your highest healing, your highest version of your reality here on Earth, and for you to experience all of the magic, all of the love, all of the abundance that is available to us all. Thank you for being here. I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.